I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, August 20th, 2018 to order. First order of business, Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie. Item 2, public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item on the agenda? Hearing none, let's move on to item 3, and that's approved minutes. 3.1, August 6, 2018, regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Comments, questions, changes? Sue or Lou?
I have just under number 1, we state that Ms. Haverda led the pledge, so if that could be changed to Mr., that would be helpful. The funny thing is, that's not the first time that's happened, so. And then,
So it appears on 5.2 regarding the hoses for the fire department. We had the issue, but I don't see the paragraph confirming that we did vote. And I think my recollection was Sue moved to approve and I seconded.
That's my recollection as well.
I do have a question, though, about 4.1 and the, just checking to see, do we have any idea if that septic system at Leet, the idea was that was going to be done by school start? Is it well on its way?
It's well on its way. Linda?
Yes, it will be done by school.
Hi, Linda.
by the
Okay,
start of school.
so things are on track.
Right, there's gonna be some minor things that need to be done, but it won't interrupt the start of school.
Great, thank you. That was it for me.
That was it. Okay. Anybody else?
Well, we're asking questions. Did we have to go into the other thing? Remember the discussion
that's
was?
right.
We don't know yet. That was a field condition that they needed to determine
Yeah.
once they pumped the tank, so.
Okay.
Good. Anything further? Nothing? Call the question. All in favor, as
Aye.
amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. All right. What I would like to do is I would like to move item number 4 and move that back after we handle number 9, town engineer, Janice Plasiak. Is there a motion?
I'm happy.
All right, and then I would like to move item 10 just prior to that, also, which would then come in between that item and item 9, town engineer. Is there a
Make it
motion?
all in motion.
Yes.
All in one? And it's seconded, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to item 5, Tom. Item 5, consider and take possible action on purchase of sand.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom.
All right, it's that time of year for sand.
Yeah.
So I received a quote from Seashore Construction for $16.25, which last year was $16.10 per yard. The town requires 2,400 cubic yards each year. I checked the Council of Governments. There was 2 companies, Garf Trucking at $18.90 per yard, and Lombardi Gravel at $19.38 per yard, and with a $2 delivery on top of that. Both Garf has 2,000 available yards
Okay.
and 5,000 on Lombardi. I mean, I don't think, number one, they couldn't
They couldn't meet
supply
the
us.
demand, that's right.
Okay, so I would recommend that Seashore for the following reasons: the pricing, location of the next town over, and then the inventory and delivery, which the delivery has been excellent.
Good.
So that's about it.
You got it, thanks, Tom. Somebody put that in form of a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any further questions? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Tom, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Item 6, Library Director Rob McCool, consider and take possible action on request to waive section 214-2 of the Town Code to allow the serving of wine at a fundraiser being held at the Guilford Free Library on September 16th, 2018. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Rob, you want to give us a little background on this, please? For us, but for the viewing public?
Sure. A long-term library supporter, Bob Yeager, wanted to honor his deceased wife, Pat Yeager. He spoke to me for several times trying to come up with an idea. We came up with a good idea of having a concert at the library, which is one of her passions. The desire was to have it be a fundraiser. We don't really charge for any programming, so we decided to do this when the library is going to be closed. So we're closed on Sundays in September, except for the final Sunday to do with the book sale. So the idea is to have an hour-long concert followed by an hour-long reception where wine would be served. This will be limited to about 85 would be the maximum due to space issues in the meeting room. We're anticipating about 75. Right now we have 45 people signed up for the event.
Good. Any questions? I think it's a wonderful idea, and as is the protocol, this board has to waive the prohibition on serving of alcohol on town properties. So,
Just, it's a controlled environment. The library's not open to the public at that time. It's just specifically for this
for
event.
this event, wonderful.
And some caterers, something actually doing the sale, right? Who's doing the sale?
There's a donation, sort of like as your ticket into the event. So there'll be staff members at the door, and then there'll be staff members also. The wine will be sort of in a self-service area, but with staff members there the entire time. And it's an adult-only event.
Right.
There's no sort of licensing.
Yeah, there's
concern
no
to that.
control, there's nobody watching who's taking the wine?
Staff members are there, library staff, yeah. I have 4 different
Well,
library
the
staff
other
members who will be
exception
there.
you
the
made,
entire
there
time.
was an actual vendor who used their license to do it.
Yeah.
A caterer would have that.
Former boards of selectmen have, I think this is
Yeah,
maybe
I
the
know.
third
I think the
time.
third time
Okay,
we've done
yeah.
it.
It's not a
Yeah, it's just
common
the
thing.
new, yeah.
Would it be
I
possible to
don't
just
have-
check on that? Make sure that it's not a concern? Check
I don't think
to
the
see.
idea was to charge for the wine. It was just
No.
part
I
of
don't
the
think that's-
event price, which is a suggested donation of $50 or
Right.
up.
My suggestion would be we work with town council to see if there's, see what the legalities of it are.
Yeah,
At
'cause,
this
this
point, we're all
is a
spent.
change with you doing it on public, for access, and I know we've done it with caterers, and I don't have any problem. I mean, I understand that we've done it before and that type of thing, but I would like to just check and make sure that with the new policies that, we're doing everything that we're supposed to.
And
I'm not
speaking
sure
with Bob
what-
Yeager, I believe he's amenable to that idea. We were trying to keep the cost down in order to benefit the library the most. He's underwriting the cost of the entire event, with the idea being then the proceeds all go to the library. So he's hoping to, minimize those costs, but if we, if that's necessary, he's amenable to that.
No,
idea.
It's definitely worth checking. It's
Ask
very
the
wise.
question for insurance.
Okay.
Yeah, very wise.
We will check on it. However, you have advertising you need to get out related to this?
Oh, I would make the motion that we do it,
Okay.
but based on that, we
Subject.
cover
Subject.
ourselves,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so, and actually, we're not even subject to, I think, at this point. You're comfortable?
Could I just ask one question? Is the catering idea that there needs to be a professional who's there the entire time, or?
Just who's watching, who's.
Because there isn't,
getting
I mean, the
wine.
intention is there will be a paid staff
There's a-
member.
there's a
I think the issue
specific
was that,
concern.
the police, Jeff had forwarded rules and regs that you guys adopted that pertain to like alcohol on the green.
Mhm, that's
So
what
I think maybe I should check those rules and regs, see how broad they were worded.
Specifically
Bless
to
you.
make sure that there's no requirement that we have any kind of an alcohol license. I think when we discussed the event on the green, it was stated that
It's
the
under
caterer
somebody
was
else's
providing a
license,
license. So just to make sure that there are no requirements
So you
there.
could vote for it and then just subject to
Right.
Subject to,
council checking.
okay.
That's my motion.
There you go.
Thanks, Pam.
And I'd like to second that.
Okay, second it. Any further questions or discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Good luck with that. Good luck.
Item 7, business office, business manager for the Board of Education. 7.2 is to discuss and take possible action on technology lease resolution for the Board of Education. Linda?
Good morning.
Good morning. This is an annual event, as I understand it, from my history on the Board of Finance. You just want to give, for the benefit of the viewing public, a snapshot of what we're doing?
Yes, so, we do a technology lease, every year for a number of years. It's a $500,000 lease. This year's lease will be used to purchase staff laptops, Chromebooks, and a computer graphics lab, so various technology equipment. We did not go out to bid because there's only a few players in this. The Board of Ed did approve waiving of the bid. We we requested proposals from 3 companies that we've done business with before. One has now removed themselves, they no longer do these kind of leases. So we've got proposals from TD Equipment Finance and JP Morgan. And the low bid was TD Equipment Finance at a rate of 3.24. And you have the resolution in front of you. Board of Ed cannot enter into debt on their own. We don't have the authority, so we need the Board of Selectmen to approve us entering into debt.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to,
And-
in favor of this.
A second.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Again, this is an annual event, and by the
Yes.
way, we have already executed all of the documents in preparation for this, so as soon as we approve this, those documents will be released, the lease documents will be
Great.
released.
And there's some other pages that need your signature. So I just handed them to Mary Jane.
Jane,
She has them.
there you go. Good.
So,
And without belaboring it, Linda, the point is that this lease situation allows us to keep the technology fresh, replacing Chromebooks probably that were purchased on a previous lease some
Right.
years back.
right.
Yes.
Lease
So
purchase, right, I mean, at the end, so.
we wouldn't have the funds in our budget to do $500,000 of technology purchase every year. So this allows us to pay for it over 5 years and keeps our technology up to date.
And if you do it every year for the same amount over 5 years, then each year you're paying a constant amount,
Right.
no budgetary increase.
Cleaning up the equipment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this lease does fit within the amount that we had budgeted for the lease payment for the 18-19 year.
Yeah, good.
So it fits right in with our budget projection.
Excellent.
Call a question.
All right, call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Linda, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item 8, Parks and Recreation Director, Rick Maynard.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rick. Item 8.1 is consider take possible action to purchase fertilizer from Site 1. Rick?
So Site 1, Guilford Business, it was originally Lesco, changed the John Deere Landscape, and now it's Site 1, but they're down on Soundview Road, just past the post office down there. And so, all the products we want to buy for them are on the CROG, they have the CROG bid list number. And the total for the fertilizer is $9,289.95. And that includes lime, gypsum, which is a soil amendment. And then we're trying a little more expensive, but 2 organic products, which we haven't really done too much before. We're trying to go in that direction a little bit, give it a try. It's called Screamin' 8 and Screamin' Green. Those are for our organic fertilizers. And so we just ask you approve the purchase from Lesco. We didn't seek bids because they do have the CROG bid number, they have that state number. And they are the local business. And the product is good. We've been using them for many, many years.
And what is the amount, Rick?
The total is, for fertilizer, $9,289.95.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Hearing none. Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Rick, you had a second item you wanted to add. Are you prepared to do that today, or not? We can
No.
certainly, okay.
No.
Thank you.
No. We're good.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank
Rick,
you.
Rick, are you gonna stay?
Again.
Yeah, you might. I have a suspicion there may be something in public forum at the end of the meeting that you might be
Okay.
helpful in discussing. Item 9, Town Engineer, Janice, please, yeah. Good morning, Janice.
How are you?
9.1 is discuss and take possible action on Northern Heights bond release and road acceptances.
Right, so, having been here only 4 weeks, but I do recall that this item has been a longstanding issue in town with regards to Northern Heights subdivision. It was actually a PRD.
Yep.
And with the completion of the roads and acceptance of the road. They have since, the town did call the bond and utilize the bond monies to do the final course of pavement on the road. And then we also had the as-built surveys done by a local land surveyor. And then it was worked out with the developer that they would complete the construction of the detention bases associated with the drainage system there, which they have completed and provided as-built. We have certifications of payments to all their subcontractors as well. And so with that, we have the request that we release their bond. I believe it will be released to the bank.
Yep.
And the remaining bond is $190,833.38. And I also would recommend at this time that we would accept the roads associated with this development, which are Northview Drive, Wimler Lane, and a section of Crooked Hill Road, which was improved, as well as new right-of-way lines established within the development on the west side of the road.
Wonderful. Thank you. You've come up to speed very quickly. Is there a motion to release the bond and accept the road on the recommendation of the town engineer
I'll make
for
that
Northern
motion.
Heights?
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Just a quick comment. That's why we post bonds. We
Right.
require contractors to post bonds in the event that they are unable to complete the work themselves because of lack of funds. So this is a perfect example of why we require this.
And as far as checking that we've met all of the requirements and that type of thing, that was done by a third-party outside surveyor?
Right, we hired Anderson Associates to do the land survey, as-built, set all the monuments, so we have that in our hands as well.
Good question.
Aye.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Janice,
Thank you.
very much. Okay. Now we are actually on item 10, and that is 10.1, BYO from Guilford, and Terry Kane is going to come up and kick this off. Good morning,
you.
Terry. How are you today?
Good morning. BYO is a group of residents concerned about the global problem of plastic waste. Our mission here is to find solutions at a local level, and to that end, we are here today to advocate for an ordinance
Okay.
to phase out or roll back the use of single-use plastic bags at the point of checkout.
Okay.
Our method for change is to build community consensus and partnerships, which is what.
Turn down the lights to Mitch behind you,
Yeah.
or sit at the table.
Right. Which is,
Mitch, right behind you.
so we've been building these partnerships over the past many months since the spring. So one of our major partners at BYO is the Guilford High School Environmental Club, and we have several members of that club supporting us today who've been doing all the work. If you'd like to stand up, please, just for a moment.
Thank you for doing your work and
Yeah.
participating.
So we have several documents for you that I'll pass out after Molly's presentation. So this is Molly Babin.
Hello, Molly. How are you today?
Hello. So thank you for letting us speak with you today. I am a recent graduate of Guilford High School in June. I will be attending Middlebury College in the fall. So we are Bring Your Own BYO Guilford.
Hold on for a second. I didn't realize you were going to talk like that. I got to put a microphone
Oh,
right
no
here.
problem.
Molly, does it make sense for you to be on this side a little easier so you can see your slides?
Sounds good.
Where you said it. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
And it is our initiative to reduce plastic pollution in our town by eliminating the use of single-use plastic checkout bags. So overall, the issue of plastic pollution is a big global problem. 9 million tons of plastic enter the ocean every year. And according to National Geographic, plastic pollution is worth mentioning in the same breath as climate change. And a main reason for this is its effect on animals. So 700 species are affected by plastic pollution, either by ingestion or entanglement, and 100,000 marine animals die every year due to plastic pollution. 90% of seabirds globally have been found to have some form of trace of plastic in their bodies. And microplastics, so when plastic enters the ocean, it breaks into microscopic pieces. And those are ingested by animals, but not only that, they then enter the human food chain. And the World Health Organization is currently doing a health report on what the health implications for humans are of ingesting these microplastics. So why plastic bags in particular? They are the #1 consumer item in the world, and 60,000 are used every 5 seconds in the United States alone. The working life of a plastic bag is 12 minutes on average. However, it lasts in the environment for at least 450 years. So it doesn't make sense that we are using something for such a short amount of time when it is lasting in the environment and in the ocean for so many centuries afterwards. Only 1 to 3% of plastic bags are recycled, and in Connecticut and in Guilford, we cannot single stream recycle them. However, they do end up finding themselves in the recycling, in which they clog up recycling machines to the point where people have to be paid as a job to take plastic bags out of the recycling machines so that they aren't broken. So 80% of plastic in the ocean comes from a land-based source. So it is our plastic that we are using here on land and coming from stores that is ending up in the ocean. Here is one route that it may take, blowing from a trash can, going into a storm drain, traveling through pipes, down a river, into the ocean. And it is not only a huge global issue, but it does affect us locally in Guilford because of our really close proximity to the Long Island Sound, which was made a national estuary by Congress. So plastic bags are one of the top 5 pollutants in the Long Island Sound, and it is very important for us to protect the sound because it has such a great diversity of species, invertebrates, fish, and birds, and is of national and global significance to some birds. For example, here in Guilford we have the East River Preserve, which is one of the only global homes to the red sparrow. So because we have such a wide diversity of animals and wildlife, we believe it is our responsibility to protect them. Also, plastic bags commonly are found in storm drains and contribute to flooding. A researcher at UConn has been researching microplastics in our Long Island Sound and has found them, particularly in shellfish. Also, growing up here in Guilford, I have found that we really value our shared spaces, and our identity is often associated with the green or the fairgrounds or Westwoods or the shoreline, and we believe it is our responsibility to keep these shared community spaces clean. A beach cleanup in February found that we found much plastic in the East River Preserve and on Jacobs Beach, meaning that we have not been keeping these areas as clean as we would like. So many areas around the world have been putting legislation on plastic bags due to these issues. 32 countries have a ban on plastic bags, plus around the same amount have a fee. In Denmark, the average Dane uses 4 plastic bags per year, which just goes to show that legislation does change habits, and habits can be changed. California and Hawaii both have statewide plastic bag bans, and more than 200 towns and cities in the United States have also eliminated plastic bag, including 81 towns and cities in Massachusetts. In Connecticut, Westport has had a ban on plastic bags for 10 years about, and Greenwich just passed one that is going into effect this September. There has been a study in Westport a year after their ban went into effect, where they found that 53% of the bags leaving the Westport Stop and Shop were reusable, 45% were paper, and 2% of people were carrying their groceries without a bag. Compared to Norwalk and Wilton, who did not have any plastic bag bans, only 10% of the bags leaving the Stop and Shop were reusable, and 86% were plastic. And there's a huge groundswell of support for this idea all around Connecticut, and these are where BYO groups have been formed and are advocating for a plastic bag ban in Connecticut or in their individual towns. So there are several options on legislation on plastic bags. One is putting a straight ban on plastic bags. We believe that this would transition Guilford from using plastic bags to paper bags without putting an incentive for people to bring their own reusable bags. Another option that we recommend is banning plastic bags and then putting a small fee on paper bags, because this really takes into account the environmental impact of paper bags, as while they are biodegradable and do not contribute to the issue of ocean pollution, they do use more carbon and fossil fuels in their own production, and we want to minimize the environmental impact, which is why we really want people to bring their own bags. That is why we're called BYO Guilford. Plus, an extra fee on paper bags would be good for businesses by compensating them for the extra cost of paper bags. California has a ban on plastic and a small fee on paper, the entire state, and many other towns and cities around the United States are beginning to have this legislation, including Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in December, Boston is also going to have this ban on plastic and fee on paper. So another town nearby that has this type of legislation is Newcastle in Westchester County, New York. And here I have a letter from the chairperson of the Newcastle Sustainability Advisory Board that was written to Greenwich when Greenwich was considering their plastic bag ban. In the last paragraph, he explains that after their ban and fee were passed, a new grocery store opened near the border, and it attracts residents from other towns that don't yet have a reusable bag law, meaning that fee does not deter people from shopping in that town. That store uses 40% fewer grocery bags than they would have if there were no ban and fee, and a pharmacy in that town uses 75% fewer bags than they had been using before. The chairperson says our businesses are saving money and our residents are proud of what they accomplished. So we have had a lot of town support from residents by collecting over 500 names in the letter that we are giving to you through several different methods from people all over Guilford. And we have also gotten support from businesses. We have been speaking with businesses. Bishop's Orchards has agreed to be our sponsor and partner and wants to be a town leader in eliminating plastic bags. Here you can see a big Y bag, a plastic bag deterring people from using more plastic bags. But they have been offering many options of reusable bags, and they are trying to phase people out of using plastic bags because many Big Y stores and several Big Y stores in Massachusetts have already had to follow their own town ordinances, and Big Ys have already changed from plastic to paper. So that can be done on the individual town level. It doesn't have to be done on the corporate level. Not every Big Y has to change. It can change town by town, and they have experience with that. So thank you for letting us speak with you today. We have an example ordinance for you,
Right.
which is the Greenwich ordinance, and it gives a lot more details about thickness of bags, what exact bags are banned.
Molly, that was a terrific presentation. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So we have, I didn't make copies of everything for everybody because
We have.
solid waste.
Okay.
We don't have all of these though. We have
No,
over
this is-
500 there, and those are all the names. And counting, we have more coming in every
See,
day.
we've gotten at least, we've broken the ice
I
a
think
little
we
bit.
have about 400 on the original list that you sent.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is just sort of a summary of what you just heard. Whoops, sorry, and two more.
Would you be willing to share a copy of that presentation with us?
Yes, I have a printout. Do you
Okay.
want that?
If you have it electronically, just
Okay, I
email it.
can
We'll,
send you-
we'll work on
yeah.
that, Molly. We'll figure out how to get that to you. Before you leave.
Yes.
Questions or comments from anyone?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a commendable and worthwhile endeavor. I mean, part of the problem with something like this is you can't see the entire problem, so people feel like their little tiny solution or part of the solution is gonna make a difference. But I feel like over time, if everybody, you guys are building up some snowball effect here, and
Right.
it'll make a difference long term. I mean, are there other costs associated with this process that we don't see here today?
Right, there should be no costs at all to the town, and this was something that Greenwich, before they passed it, researched quite thoroughly, and that's the conclusion they came up with. I can get you that information if you'd like and email that to you. But in fact, anything as far as, checking up on if people are really doing this, the monitoring process can actually be given to an already in place commission or task force.
Geez, we happen to know one of those.
We happen to know one, yes.
So just, I'm not against this idea, I'm just,
Yeah.
just being the devil's advocate.
Absolutely.
What would be the biggest reason that people of the town would not want to support this?
Well, there's a lot of questions, and on the back I've included some of the most frequently asked questions and some answers to that. One is, well, what about people on a budget who really can't afford to buy reusable bags? And we have a solution for that. We intend to supply bags for distribution through our agencies, our town agencies, social service agencies, for anyone who needs them. We also have a method for including people, for making their own bags. We're going to do a pilot program of that at the Hammonasset Festival this month.
Why couldn't some of the fees for the bags be used to fund, some of the major changes, obviously, are the ones that use the most,
Right.
to just, supply reusable bags?
That's a good idea, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to charge a fee,
Mhm.
if that's just going to the stores to buy a different kind of bag,
Right,
why not buy bags that people can just
Yeah.
pick up and use?
yeah. That would.
The problem is you might end up with a closet full of reusable bags.
Well, that's a good point, because people do end up with a closet full of bags and a trunk full of bags and a purse full of bags that are reusable, which is fantastic. So one of the things that have come up is we donate back bags, and I've asked several businesses.
The issue with that, though, is that I've been
Yeah.
involved in a co-op in the Dartmouth area,
Yeah.
and they had a health issue.
Oh, okay.
People were
Yeah,
bringing
right.
the bags back to be recycled, and they had to take them,
Mhm.
it's-
Right, right.
that becomes a health issue.
There's actually a whole movement about this in Australia. They call it boomerang bags.
Okay.
So there's a group of people who make the bags and then take them to the point of sale. People can take them if they've forgotten theirs and bring them back. I think perhaps the health issue comes up only in grocery stores, where it could be like meats or something.
Yeah, I mean, you
But,
just don't know. I mean, something
yeah.
coming back from other homes. I mean, you just don't know. I mean,
Right,
it
that's
just,
true. That's
it's one of
true.
those unintended consequences of
Yeah.
trying to do a good thing and then,
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's something else to consider and
I mean, it
to-
seems like it makes sense.
Right.
It's, bunch of bags in the back of your car, drop them off and
Right.
pick up the next one, but
Right.
there's bigger issues over it.
So,
I do have a question. I'm
Yes.
completely in support of your goal.
Okay.
If it's true, and I believe it is, that most of the community supports this concept,
Mhm.
and two of our biggest, if not the biggest, suppliers of plastic bags in town, Bishop's and Big Y, are supportive, what about trying something voluntary? Perhaps with an education effort, perhaps with more of a move toward recycling the single-use bags, which I believe can be done, and I believe we don't accept them at our
Not yet.
transfer station.
Yeah.
Would that be something possibly to try first before going to creating a law which then has enforcement and monitoring and all sorts of other complications?
I can get you some research on that. I believe the voluntary has not been working as well as the, and you can jump in if you'd like, as well as a ban. What works the most is charging. I mean, that's why we would like to charge for the paper bags. So if you charge, people change their habits really quick.
But that could be voluntary on the part of the retailers.
Mm.
They could just put that policy in place. They could do it tomorrow. What?
Right, but it
As a-
would be,
as a
it's
first
hard
step.
for an individual store within a larger chain. They don't really have the individual power to change. Usually they will only change if a town ordinance is passed. But
Not to be argumentative, but if Bishop's and Big Y are both
well,
on
Big Y
board
was
with this.
Big Guilford Big Y wasn't planning on changing on its own, but it did understand that if a town ordinance would pass, it could change over.
What about the smaller retailers?
The smaller retailers would probably change over with discussion, or could.
Could they could change over voluntarily, and that's one reason why we're going and talking to everyone and doing this huge education campaign.
And the small retailers would also have to have the option of charging for a different kind of bag.
Well, that's mainly for the, the paper grocery bags that we used to all use before
So
plastic
what
was
would a
invented.
smaller,
Right.
a convenience store, what would they be expected to use?
I think the marketplace is probably as good a evidence of that
Right.
transition as anybody. And they don't use plastic bags at the marketplace. They use various sizes of paper.
Yep.
I can appreciate that, but I'm just asking for an example of what a convenience store, what would their options be?
Well, their options would also be to stock paper bags, for which
And
they would
charge.
charge if a resident wanted one. But,
The ultimate goal is that people come in with their own bag.
that's right.
Exactly.
That-
To all stores,
Yep.
not just
Right.
grocery
Right.
stores.
The ultimate goal is a change of habits.
I mean,
that-
there's a
that
logic
fits
to
our
doing it in a
environment.
grocery store and you plan and you do it.
Right.
Stop in a convenience store.
Well, even
But
more
then
so.
it's only one or two items that you carry around.
I was just thinking how this is a behavioral modification exercise on the part of
Exactly.
all of us.
In education.
And I, 90% of the time, I use reusable bags when I go to the grocery store. But it never dawns on me to bring a reusable bag when I go to Walmart. And I'm going to suggest that Walmart is probably the largest contributor, largest dispenser of plastic bags, because I don't think I'm alone. You go to the grocery
Right.
store, you
think
bring
of
your
that.
bag,
Yeah.
and then Walmart doesn't even have for sale reusable bags at Walmart. So now, has anyone reached out to Walmart or is familiar? I'm assuming,
Right.
Molly, as you said, they're a corporate entity that's dealing with this in other places in the country.
Yes, I'm sure.
Right.
I have not done a lot of research on Walmart.
Right.
To also just quickly answer your question, I went to a panel on plastic pollution in the Long Island Sound, and I heard a woman speak about educational campaigns versus legislation. And she said that educational campaigns and voluntary campaigns work, but they work temporarily. And people get excited about it, and they change their habits, and then slowly they go back to their old habits.
So the key is to educate the retailers. So if that
Yeah.
petition with 500 signatures went to other merchants instead of to us, and people were saying, we're not going to shop anymore at your establishment unless you get in line with this. I mean, to me, that's voluntary because it's not by law.
Right.
But
Right.
You might
the
see.
largest dispensers of plastic bags in our town, Big Y, Walmart, CVS, I do not think they can voluntarily change store by store.
Right, they
Which is,
can't.
while the smaller stores can and Bishop's can, because it's in like its own individual store, I believe an ordinance would be necessary to change over Walmart and Big Y and CVS.
Okay, that's interesting.
But
Yeah.
you say
Okay.
the entire city of Boston is gonna manage to do this in January. So
December,
every,
yeah.
December.
every
They've had a long.
store, big or little, is gonna be, and is it a formula based on what you just explained to us? BYO plus pay
Yes, I think it is 5 cents
plus
per
fee?
bag. Yes.
Right, right, right. So I just have a statistic that's interesting here in Ireland. When they started charging for these plastic bags, they cut consumption by 90%, and they raised $9.6 million for environmental and waste projects. So it's a win-win,
Right.
really, because if you charge for these bags, you're going to reimburse and you're going to save money for the merchants, right? And then, of course, the big win is for us who have a cleaner environment.
So the charge, I'm trying to think of the mechanics within the store. The charge isn't a profit center for the retailer. The charge goes directly to some fund.
Well,
That's in Ireland.
in Ireland,
Well, what are you
that's what they
suggesting
did.
here? Where would the charge go?
We're suggesting here that the charge reimburses the merchant so that we aren't asking
So
them
it
to
ends up being a
spend,
profit center for them.
Well, break even.
offsets
I think
the
it's-
cost.
Well, all
I
right.
think it's
The
a
word
break-
profit,
a
it ends up
break
being a
even.
revenue stream for them.
It is, it's, so,
Because their
yeah,
expenses are going to go up because they're gonna go to paper.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct, but their expenses will go down because most people will be bringing their own. So hopefully they will be
bags.
not buying as many bags overall, so they won't buy as many paper bags.
There must be some data out there that
Yeah.
suggests what the cost differential is related to, in between plastic and paper.
Right, and that's something that I was asking
And the larger
Missions.
the larger the organization, the less expensive it's gonna be for them to make that transition.
Correct.
Walmart buys at a scale that is, no one else in the world can buy at, but
Mhm.
maybe Amazon. So those folks, it'll be a negligible impact. It's the, it's a small retail shops in town who will bear the more significant impact of the cost of going to paper. But again, we start to talk about, people starting to rethink, you bring a plastic bag into Chucky's when you go get a couple of bags of chips and some soda. So it over time, you're right, it will. But I don't think there's any denying that the sheer purchasing power of the larger organizations is going to drive their costs lower than the general retail operation. Molly, your point?
Westchester County, the Newcastle in New York, they have that ban on plastic and fee on paper, and they only have the fee on paper in like the major stores, grocery stores, pharmacies. They have a list, and it's not every store that has to charge. So we could discuss having the smaller retailers not have to charge. That is another option.
It's interesting.
Okay, so there's a
I-
ban on
I-
plastic,
That
and
would be something, initially, my reaction is that might be legally problematic, but I would have to look at that.
That's
Mhm. Right,
so the plan is to ban plastic
ban plastic.
and charge for paper bag.
Right.
Right.
That almost sounds counterintuitive, Charlie. It
Certainly
it
does.
does, right? But the charge for the paper is to drive people to use
Use
reusable.
their own bag.
Right.
But at least have.
And
that option.
compensate the retailer. And again, that number, I think you had different examples. There was 10 cents and then 5
5
cents
cents
and,
with
or
offset,
whatever,
yeah.
whatever the price point is. So,
right.
Now, it's certainly all worth
Yeah.
looking into and continue
I
to
agree.
line it
And we
up.
can certainly tailor it to our town. I mean, there's
absolutely.
enough examples around the world of how people are making this change happen that we've got a lot of information at our fingertips.
Yeah, and it'll probably be a work in progress,
Right.
When we
Right.
go the
Right.
next step. you
Right,
know.
right. That's why we
Right.
like to speak of a phase out, so that people don't get nervous and say, oh my gosh, I've got, a month's supply of plastic bags, and what am I going to do? Well, we don't want to waste anything, so we phase it out.
Over
Usually
and
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months, yeah.
To Susan's point, though, I think one of those phases, could easily be the larger stores, like rather than making it a law and going through the potential problematic issues with legalizing it, if we could start with the larger retailers, and whether it be a voluntary thing or maybe, I don't know how we do it as a town with just a few retail, that becomes an issue, but that would be a good start, that's for sure.
Agreed.
Especially if you've got the two aboard, but I guess the one store, Big Y, can't do it individually as a
Right.
store.
Right,
And I'm
right,
sure,
yeah.
Well, maybe they can change. I mean, maybe we gotta talk to corporate, not local.
Right, yeah, and we could easily go up to Springfield and talk to corporate Big Y, but the word from the managers here is that their hands are tied unless it comes from corporate.
That's what, Stop and
Yeah,
Shop told
yeah.
Greenwich as well.
Yeah.
Couple of things. One, you are not alone in this initiative. There are at least one other group that has started to organize, and we had suggested that you guys start to form together to create. I don't know,
Absolutely.
Did that?
I did, we had a meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
We just had to get to know you meeting and talked about what they're doing. They have a Facebook, it's just Daniela,
Yep.
and she started a Facebook page.
Right.
And I invited her here today, but I don't see her.
See her. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In order to establish an ordinance, there needs to be significant, there's a process by which we have to go to the public and engage the public.
Right.
I would think that this would be a prime example of the importance of doing that. So we'll start to take a look at the legalities around the ordinance. My suggestion is going to be, I'm going to expand the task of the Energy Task Force, because they're the primary charge of the Energy Task Force at this point is attaining sustainable CT status, and I think this probably falls within one of those 9 pillars.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm with this board's indulgence, I would ask. Well, no, I think we'll probably. Do I need a motion? I don't think so. I think just
I'll move
expand.
it. I
You
mean,
wanna-
yeah, I think it's worth exploring, that's for
Right.
sure, and, that's a perfect place for it.
Right, so I think the ownership of the project, moving it forward, and work with the Selectman's office and with our legal team to figure out how we engage the public. It would be my preference that we have a groundswell of support for this, that makes it obvious that we can't do anything but that. by
Right,
passing
right.
ordinance.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
That would be my preference, okay?
Mhm.
My personal belief is I'm in support of this project.
Mm-hmm.
However, we represent the entire community, not just our
Yeah,
individual.
and it's not only groundswell, but it's getting that message out so that, when we do get to the point of the mechanics of it and having an actual ordinance that we can put in place, that we don't have to fight another battle. I mean, there's been so many
Agreed.
other
So
good ideas historically that, you
Right.
get to the public and actually doing it, and all of a sudden, things pop up. And that's, I think, we're.
And to that end, I would envision a couple of educational presentations throughout the community over time. And Molly, I know you're headed up to Middlebury in a couple of days, probably, right? But I'm sure there are underclassmen who are represented here who are going to carry on the torch and would work with Terry and the Energy Task Force to continue this
Maybe
initiative.
even the Chamber of Commerce too. I mean, those are the people that are gonna be affected.
That's a great
by it.
idea.
Yeah,
We'd
that
love
makes
to bring our
sense.
presentation around
Presentations,
town.
right. So I think a series of presentations, clearly, I think the Guilford Courier will probably have an article on this, maybe online within a couple of days or at some point. So I think the idea here is to build a groundswell, and this is basically, from your perspective and the task force perspective, it's a marketing campaign.
Right,
We
absolutely.
need to sell this to the community, so.
Mhm, mhm. And we are
anything-
excited to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, and we got you out of here at 20 after.
Yes, perfect timing.
Thank you,
Thank
Molly
you
and
all.
Terry.
You're heading there.
Thank you.
Terrific job, and I thank everyone who had a hand in pulling this together and who has given their time for this initiative, so, thank you. Okay. I believe we now have original item 4 is Mary Jane in the room. Ah!
Ah.
We gotta reboot. No, I don't.
Back to it. Good morning, Mary Jane.
Morning.
So, what would you like to bring to our attention?
Well, I'm here today with June 30, 18 information updates. We'll be reporting on July and August next month as we have done in years past. So I'd just like to start by saying, obviously, these are still unaudited numbers. We have a number of adjustments that need to be made to all of these, specifically in the tax collection area. There are a number of items outside of the budget that we have to post in and out of there. So these numbers are still preliminary. They just are closer to where we stand at this time. So if we want to start with the expenses.
Jeez,
What?
changing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can start with revenue. Sorry.
No, that's, so, let's
What?
start with expenses.
It was
Just trying to catch us off guard here.
no. That was a general
How many years
station.
in revenue first?
Well,
Just teasing, just teasing. Go.
Expenses is first on the agenda.
There you go, there you go.
That's why I was going there. Here, this is where June 30 stands before you move on some of the adjustments and transfers that I have later on in my reports. So this is showing the overages in the departments where there are, and if you've looked at the transfers that I've submitted, you will see that we'll be addressing them. The one I'd like to talk about, however, is fire. So if you look at the fire department on this report, it does show an overage of over $287,000. However, later on in the agenda, there will be a transfer for retroactive pay from the reserve from personnel that will be coming into that. and bringing that overage down to just over $200,000. We are dealing with that particular overage. I do have some numbers that from the SAFER grant. Out of that $200,000, 21,000 of it is salaries. Let me back up. We've already attributed the 75% of the grant into these numbers. So net of the 75%, this overage includes 21,000 of salaries, over $50,000 worth of equipment and gear, which is not
Covered by safety.
reimbursed
Okay.
by the grant. So that was a cost that we knew going in we were going to have. And then another 17,000 in training for these. Those are the items. Only salaries and benefits are reimbursable through the grant. So everything else that we need to bring the 8 new firemen up to where they need to be is a cost for the town, and that was expressed during the presentations for the grant. So we were aware of that. It does leave other overages in equipment, maintenance, more of the regular standard items that we have. So unfortunately, there is $200,000 overage. If I remember correctly, we had estimated between $100,000 and $150,000, I think, earlier on. So it's a little higher than we had thought, which is why we're trying to, offset the grant as much as we can. But that, so in my transfers, you will see, first of all, the transfer from reserve for the retro pay, which was budgeted, and we have that set aside. And then the overage of the 202,000 is noted in the transfers. So after all of those transfers are made, if they're approved through here and the Board of Finance, the subtotal town number down below will be about $140,000. We had anticipated this being the budget year where we were going to come out flat. But we worked really hard with all the department heads, working on their encumbrances, trying to make sure we only spent what we needed. Again, these are unaudited numbers. That number could rise or fall as we go through, but at this point, it's possible it could be as high as $140,000 left over on the town side for expenditures. The Board of Ed, we are estimating at 0. We have adjustments and transfers that we are still working with the Board of Ed to put in here. So although they're showing over $400,000 left in their budget, we anticipate that to be closer to about 2,000 at the end of the year. So that's what I really wanted to bring to your attention, unless you have any other questions on the expenditure side. As I ramble.
Yeah, no, thank you for that explanation.
Can you explain to me, the human services line has 0 spent?
Human services.
Am I reading that correctly, or is it all spent?
All spent.
Oh, 0, I see, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, if
Zero
you
left.
remember correctly, I think we
Spent all
talked
that
about
at the
that
beginning of
last
the year?
month, that there was that
Still got
$1,000
one
lingering.
left. Yeah.
And we were able to,
Okay.
we didn't want that to hold over another year like that happened a couple of years ago. So we're down to 0, so that means every dollar has gone to the community that was budgeted.
All right, so I want to go back to fire.
Okay.
Overtime at 66,000, in excess of what we had anticipated, and replacement salaries at 99. It's anticipated with the additional firefighters that replacement salaries number is going to go down. Is that my understanding?
That is what we anticipate, yes.
Okay. All right. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon us during budget season to have a more frank discussion about what those costs really are going to be. Running a deficit in those accounts, we need to understand, is there a systemic deficit built into these numbers that we're not really accommodating? So I think we need to have fuller discussion or frank discussions about that going forward in the next budget cycle.
Right, because when we presented this budget, we presented what we thought was a good number.
Right.
Past years, we kind of knew what we needed, but for budgetary purposes, I think it was kind of, brought down a little bit. This was a year that, I really pushed to have that number be a true number, and we still, some of
No.
it is attributed to,
Workers' comp cases.
and as you can see, the salary line right now looks over, but it won't be with the
With the
transfers.
transfer,
So, it's just,
Right, it's the overtime and the replacement salaries, and I understand that there, without naming names, but there are workers' comp cases that
Correct.
that are impacting that number as well. But
Absolutely.
there should be an offsetting revenue on the workers' comp.
yes, it doesn't offset 100%,
Percent,
but
right.
yes.
And
Mhm.
where is that reflected?
It should be reflected here.
So it's already embedded in that
Correct,
number.
if we've received the reimbursement, we
Reimbursement.
pay first.
Right.
So it's possible that there are some reimbursements that haven't come in yet.
Okay.
I don't have that answer right now.
Got it.
There's some other overages
Mhm.
that I don't know could be related to the expenses not covered by the grant. For instance, the utilities went over by $13,000, and the something else that the education and training, that is what
Correct.
you
Yeah, I
mentioned,
mentioned
but
that.
the vehicle maintenance went over $30,000. So those are other things that we also need to look at, I think.
Yeah, I'm not, and I don't know how they affect this year's budget. I'm not
Okay.
sure how much the other firehouse is being used in addition to what it might have been used
Right.
before.
Yeah, that's
I don't have that. It's a excellent question moving forward. Clearly, if we're gonna have 2 more people on a shift, possibly that's 2 extra vehicles. I don't know those answers, but those are very good questions to ask. Mike Shove, who my office works closely with regarding the grant, is willing to come, and he offered to come to the meeting. But if there's any additional information needed specific to that, he's more than willing to come and speak with you here at a meeting.
Well, there had to be a certain amount of startup, utilizing the North Guilford.
Right,
Garage.
and my number is
Heck.
obviously focused on the grant itself,
Yeah.
and not so much all those other things didn't ask.
Actually, the cost for the North Guilford Firehouse retrofit was nominal, thanks to the Stepbacker family years ago who contributed to building the North Guilford
But
fire
just opening
fire
it and
station.
keeping it open, I mean, there
Correct,
had to
you
be
know,
a
with the
little
lights
bit.
on all
That's
day.
right.
But by the
instead of
same
just,
token,
you
those
know.
additional firemen were supposed to help out with the overtime and that, so
Right.
a little
Replacement
shakeout
salaries,
time.
right.
Right, and obviously this first quarter is not a good indication. We have made transfers on estimated reimbursement. Clearly, it's based on what we're sending to them, but, so different things.
To Matt's point, it requires a closer look.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, anything further on expenses? No? Revenue?
So the revenue as it stands here is over by approximately $600,000, which is exactly what we had estimated early on. I know there are some, as I said earlier, some additional adjustments that need to be made to this number, which I would assume would only make this number greater. But I don't have that information
Well,
today.
the other state line item is short by $750,000.
Correct. The Board of Education and the state, all the revenue from the state has come in exactly where we had anticipated. We knew that we were going to be short on the ECS and, on the state money, and get the additional money based from the ECS more than what we had originally budgeted. Those numbers are right on target to what we had anticipated.
Just based on state budgetary issues
Correct.
and what was going on.
Exactly right. It's
So
based
that-
on what we budgeted as the best that we could do. with the numbers that we had when we put the budget together in comparison, and it's a matter of just how the money switched from
A lot of
ECS to
effort
state,
and
you
a
know.
lot of discussion went into those.
Correct, so this,
Estimates.
that's what, this is the first year that when I was reporting on state aid, that I really looked at it as one big
bucket.
number,
Yeah.
as opposed to ECS and everything else. We really
Mhm.
had to look at it, you know,
Yeah.
It-
Well, let's
Yeah.
realize,
Makes
we,
sense.
comprehensively as opposed to separate.
Yeah.
Board of Finance put that budget to the public in, well, basically March of 2017.
Right.
The legislature didn't approve a budget until October of 2017. So we had no idea where they were going. We had made that $1 million cut. Now, that number from the state of Connecticut includes the $1 million cut that we had anticipated.
Yes,
All right,
the
and then
budget.
what we forget is the governor had a series of rescissions shortly after the legislature passed the budget, so.
Correct.
On a different category of state
Yeah.
revenue, I thought we discussed the second half of the town aid road grant, and we were expecting to get that, or?
We are not.
We're not getting
No,
that,
we,
okay. Okay.
last time I spoke on it, we were hopeful.
Hopeful,
That we would get
okay.
it, but not
Not happening.
counting on it,
Okay.
and we did not. We have, however, already received the first half for 19, so
Oh.
at least we've got our first half
Yeah,
this
yeah.
year.
Right.
But no.
Okay.
So that line item for other includes the loss of revenue for the second half of that.
Good. Anything further?
Unless you have any particular questions.
I don't think so.
Um,
Good.
Any questions on the warrants?
I didn't have any.
Happening now.
I did provide a medical report.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the medical report does not provide much more information than I gave last month. Couple things I will note. Anthem is no longer providing us the reports that we would normally receive. Hence, I do not have an updated catastrophic claims number. We are working with Anthem and our consultants to either reinstate, some type of reporting, or to at least provide us the data we need in a different manner, or, give us access to the data and I'll get it myself and I'll get it quicker than I have in the past. So unfortunately, we still do not have that number. The other issue is, it's an issue, but the Board of Education, if you remember last month I reported that the Board of Ed had not made their last payment to the medical fund. There was a meeting. Matt, do you want to talk about the meeting?
I participated in a meeting with Chairman Bloss, Chairman Ailes, and Chairman Ailes is comfortable with that decision. That will be a point of discussion at tonight's Board of Finance meeting. I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to weigh in on that. The concern I had was the process.
Yeah.
We had a series of meetings with the Board of Education and our insurance consultant and the medical consultant, insurance consultant, and we had talked about a range of options. As you know, we're talking about the significant excess that we have in that account and what's the appropriate way to utilize that for other purposes. And one of the things was, one of the open discussion points was to not make the last contribution. And the Board of Education made that decision that was an option they wanted to pursue. The point I had made at a Board of Finance meeting is that this really should be a joint decision.
Right.
Because collectively, the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen have entered into an agreement to provide insurance, self-insured program for our employees. And it really should be much more of a mutual decision as opposed to a unilateral decision. However, Mike Ailes is comfortable because this goes, the contribution, the $900,000 that they did not make to the medical account is going to the pension account to shore up their pension account, which is in need of some shoring up. So it will do a couple of things. One, it will fill the hole that is there. It will also it will also diminish their ARC payment over time because they have less to catch up on.
Mhm.
So, and we had some concerns about the appropriateness of how do we get the money out of that account, and this clearly is one of the ways to do it.
So if on the town side, we had done the same thing, if we
right.
had shorted our June payment, I
Right.
just would like to note that we would have been in the red for this year. Is
For
that
the year.
correct? We have a surplus of 100,000 for the year, and our
Right.
contribution was more than that.
Right.
So if we had done the same thing.
Yeah, and that's the nature of the conversation, that, you know, the non-unilateral methodology.
Yes.
If we did this cooperatively, maybe their number would have been less, and we would have been able to participate in the same fashion.
Certainly.
And drive,
And still
and
take-
drive the excess to the unassigned fund balance as opposed to this account. So,
Right.
But your point is very well taken,
Right, so
which I
where,
had in mind.
you know, so where this stands at the moment is accurate, and, moving forward, we'll see. But I'd just
Right.
like to note that the payment to the pension transfer has been made.
Has been made.
So
Right.
that
It's
money,
done.
Yep.
it didn't get used for any other
The purpose,
purpose.
right.
It-
Right.
To the penny, the amount that would have gone into medical went into the pension fund. So
Right.
that is already working for us and hopefully earning us some interest on.
So just to be clear, in this instance, it's not going to be unilateral, or it's still gonna be up for discussion at the Board of Finance meeting?
Legally, the Board of Education can do whatever they want with the money we give them.
Okay.
In the spirit of the agreement between the two entities to enter into a self-funded insurance plan, I think it is essential that we have discussion and agreement on how we proceed with that.
Okay.
So, they have the right to make that decision, because the state statutes protect the Board of Education and allow them to spend it where they feel it's most appropriate.
And when we say they have the right, I'm not sure if the Board of Ed would not have been required to vote on that decision, I believe. I do not know if they did or not. I've read the minutes, I don't see a vote.
Right.
But because they expended funds all within one, like one of our departments, it was
sure.
all in the same category,
Right.
whether it went into medical or whether it went into pension.
Right.
So that
It
decision,
stayed in that line item, yeah.
So their board didn't necessarily have to vote on that
But I think
action.
they did, I thought they
I-
did.
I didn't see it.
The information I received was that it was a board level decision,
you
whether
expect
it
to
was
see it
just
in the minutes.
reported and agreed upon, or whether there was a
Discussed.
motion
But I
that.
think
yeah.
it was done in their May meeting,
I-
wasn't it? Was it their May meeting?
It was done, earlier than,
Yeah. I haven't looked at their minutes.
yeah, so I didn't either, but that was,
Okay, so that's a perfect segue into the fact that the new estimated fund balance is about $3.6 million. And we had talked about using some of that for some town projects, all right? Clearly, I think the Board of Education has exercised their rights to some of that money already. So I will be having a discussion with the Board of Education, Board of Finance tonight about the use of fund balances. And because both the town and the Board of Education made a contribution to the health fund when it was in the red several years ago, there's somewhat unanimous agreement that that money should be available for the town and or the Board of Education to claw back, for lack of a better term. So, and that number is what,
close to 500.
500,000? So theoretically, that money may be available to us as well. And I'm going to make the case with the Board of Finance that it should be made available to the town side.
And that was the town side.
It was a combination.
combination of two.
That's right.
Town made, I don't have those in front of me, the town's amount was significantly less than the Board of Ed's contributions, so.
Right. And in the
so-
spirit of what the Board of Ed did, and not having given us the opportunity to participate in reducing our payment for the last month, I would suspect they may have some generosity of spirit and allow us to utilize some of that as well.
Right. It's really the transparency that I was
Right.
looking at. If it's in the fund and we take it out and everybody's in agreement, then
Yep.
we have a paper trail of what
Right.
happened to the
Mhm.
money.
Yeah,
This way,
nice and neat.
it just, for my purposes,
Right.
if somebody were to come into my seat tomorrow, they wouldn't see this, and when it happens. So that's purely selfish
You got it. Okay. Anything else?
Did you want to talk about this? No.
Yeah. I made copies.
So Matt asked me to put together a history of where our unassigned fund balance is.
You got a spreadsheet.
So 2013 to 2017 is taken straight from our audit. All of the numbers are straight from the audit. If you do the math, I couldn't quite get all of them to work exactly, but the way it was presented by the auditors is the way I have it on here. So I took the 2017 number and I added that $600,000 of revenue. Again, that number could be more, but I would say no less than $600,000 will go into the unassigned fund balance. So that's where the 2018 estimate lies at 10.5% of operating revenue. And I use operating revenue because the policy that was approved by the Boards of Finance and the Board of Selectmen specifically refers to operating revenue.
Okay, perfect.
So that's why you see that here. What we've been talking about over the last year or so is the level we were at 2016, 9.1. Arbitrarily, that's kind of where we started last year, obviously up for discussion. So I took the estimated 2018 unassigned fund balance, applied the 9.1% to that, and so it potentially gives us a $1.3 million difference or buffer or whatever word you want to attribute to that. But if we were to keep our current level at the 2016 level, that's the 1.3 that we have available. Again, just an estimated number at this time. So then I have a little list of ongoing
Potential
projects
usage.
that we have been discussing. And if I've missed anything, please, please tell me. I was trying to keep track. If there's something I've missed.
One item was potential use for the turf field, the replacement of the original turf field, not the, not the ongoing issue we have with the other one.
Scheduled replacement of the carpet.
Yeah.
Okay, again, clearly, just for discussion purposes, I'm trying to keep a list of things that we've talked about as a group, and again, so if I missed anything, please let me know.
I thought we were setting funds aside.
Well, we had
On the
talked
operating
about,
budget,
we were doing it through the operating budget, but we had talked about possibility of just funding the reval in one time instead of budgeting. It's just on the table, not, again, these are,
Currently in the operating budget.
Right. It's currently in the operating budget, but we had thought about possibly funding that in a different manner. That's what put it on the list.
Okay, but reval at this point in time is funded properly.
It's funded through the operating budget.
Okay.
What does OPE mean?
Other post-employment benefits. This is the liability that the town has for employees under a contract that allows them medical or other type of benefits once they retire or leave
To
the town's
change
employ.
that's been imposed from on high.
Right, so we have, Guilford has always had this liability. We've always had some type of benefits given to retirees, although as you've signed contracts, that has become less and less. But over the past couple of years, Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB, has imposed standards that require the towns to now report this.
It doesn't change the fund, it just changes that you have to put it on.
Correct. And that number, that liability rises, as contracts are settled and people that retire at where we are now at higher medical costs. So that number, unfortunately, has risen for Guilford over the past couple of years. It will eventually level off as we're diminishing that, but at the point, right now, we are looking at that.
That'd be an interesting number to have. I mean to interrupt you, but you know how we did it for the high school where we projected, where it would peak and where it would start
For the
leveling
debt?
out?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to do that for this?
Ken, it would be a cost for us to have our
Okay.
actuaries
Actuarial,
put that together. I'm not,
Okay.
certainly ask them,
No, I
what that cost
No,
would be, if
yeah,
it's something.
we don't wanna do that at
No.
this point in time.
Is it
but,
quantified now, or?
Through our audit it is, I'm afraid I don't have I didn't have the information with me,
No.
but, if you look in the audit,
It's in the
the
footnotes
liability
somewhere.
is there,
I
correct.
wonder if Mitch has, average age and that type of thing that would give us some feel for that projection, but that's an exercise, yeah, at this
But
point.
there might be a way, I mean, there are people that are getting some benefits that future people will not be getting.
Well, that's
and
my point about
documented
seeing what that
somewhere.
curve was, where the average age
Right.
of president and
Future retirees
pension,
will not be
yeah.
getting.
Right, well, but to pull it back to this, one idea was to offset some of that liability, to offset those payments that we're making by, starting a fund for that, or eventually, starting a trust fund similar to our pension, so that we are looking at that over, the number of years, 20 years or whatever, we choose actuarially to do, and then to keep that funded at a level exactly like we do our pension. So it's,
Would it be possible to put some numbers next to these 5 or 6 things at some point?
I was afraid to do that, only because
It's a moving
it's,
target at this point,
it's,
because of the last one.
Right.
So, because we really didn't talk numbers, now we're looking at the
Right.
1.3, okay, so maybe we got the 1.3,
Yeah.
but we really weren't talking numbers, we were really just,
For the
Yeah,
I'll just give you an
okay.
idea, for the transportation plan, I was looking for somewhere in the 300,000 range, maybe a little bit more, because that would give us the opportunity to hire a facilitator.
I would
or
love
Well,
consultants.
maybe during budget
Yeah.
cycle, we can get
This is
some
gonna be
numbers.
sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
You're
love
gonna,
to
you're gonna
see
get something,
transportation.
you're gonna see some numbers, you're gonna see some numbers sooner rather than later on that.
This is just
Technology.
setting the stage,
yeah,
kind of, yeah.
Technology, I could probably give you a number, once we get the report back from Bloom Shapiro, which is due in less than 3 weeks, it'll be back in about 3 weeks.
and I'm chairing a committee that's, we're gonna be
On the
bringing
technology.
technology collaboration, between all departments in town with a presentation for, changes in our technology.
Board.
Including Board of Ed?
No,
No,
at this point.
not at the moment, not at the moment.
This is tying together police, fire, and the town.
Police, fire, and
then-
Yeah,
town.
and then
Then we take the
Then,
next
right, so
step.
this is our
get
first
our
step.
act together before we.
Right.
We take it on the road.
So you'll be hearing from us very soon
Right,
on that,
right.
because we've been working
Yeah.
hard on that, so, that clearly has a potential, for some costs as well, be more on, personnel side. So that's the other part of the whole assessment thing.
And in a very real sense, I mean, this is benefiting ultimately taxpayers in the sense that these are obligations, in some cases, we have to spend, or will have to spend, or should spend, and will have long-term benefits for folks. Right,
Agreed.
so this is not just like, here's
Right,
some money, let's find a way to
Nothing
burn
on
it.
here is, wish list or maybes. These are all things, that, you could put it all to OPEB and we'd still have,
obligation,
we'd still
sure.
need more money. These are true obligations, things that are on the table now, that if we
Well,
didn't have these, somewhat.
Theoretically, we don't have to invest in technology, but that's been the problem. We haven't done that over the years.
And there's a
Yeah,
benefit.
My
correct.
intention
But
is
I
to-
guess my point
my
is,
intention to change that.
Yeah.
we have a potential plan for it. It's not just, can I have $300,000 for technology and I'm gonna go see what I'm gonna do with it. It's, we have numbers, a true project. I guess that's the right way to say,
Yep.
these are true projects. They're not just, if you give us money, we'll spend it. It's, here's what we have a need for, and this is how we could fund it. Otherwise, we're going back to the taxpayers.
Right,
In
and,
future.
technology is kind of like I think we all have educated ourselves enough over the years about building maintenance and not pushing things down the road, and it's the same thing with technology. And
Well, I've really been, technology is really the backbone of
Yes.
town government. You know, when something goes down, all of a sudden now we know we have technology. You know,
Don't
so
know until it's gone.
Or we
you
don't
know,
have it.
and every single thing the police department touches technology. You know, I've really,
Fire department now too.
yeah, you know,
Okay.
everything. So we're really coming in with a true need when we come to you. So I'm just setting the stage for that before we even come in.
When we're speaking of fund balances, I'm assuming that our program for investing on a rolling basis is underway at this point.
Oh, yeah, we continue to use the STIF fund, primarily the STIF fund for
Oh,
our
you're talking about
cash.
investing the money, yeah.
Yes.
Sandy tells me that just in July, we brought in over $20,000 of interest.
So we have put our plan in place, okay.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And that,
Not this, Sandy. It's-
yeah.
I know.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I'm thrilled to hear it, but.
And that had been our plan
Right along.
right along,
Yeah.
so.
And to that point, there was a significant amount of discussion during budget season and post with certain members of the Board of Finance who suggested we could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars by moving that money into longer-term government-backed securities. The reality is 80% of our tax revenue comes in within a week and a half of August 1st.
Our first debt payment.
That's right.
Right.
So the money,
Debt
so
payments.
the revenue in July was largely the money that had been there,
Correct, exactly right,
so.
right,
Well,
because, you know, we
yeah.
only, as of the middle of July, we had only brought in about $6 or $7 million in tax revenue.
Out
All
of
of
the
it came in
40
by-
some odd.
You know, it's the
I
second half of
understand
July.
that, and, I knew that cash flow logic and everything, but I just wanted to make sure
Oh,
that
absolutely.
we did take a hard look at it and we made some.
And Mary Jane has a schedule that she's willing to share with the
And just so
board.
it's clear, it's really what we've been doing.
Doing.
I mean, we've been utilizing STIF, you know, things have changed, the school is done, you know, so we're really not changing the philosophy, we're changing what we have to invest. You know, so,
Right. And now, we're now at a point where we can take a look, because of the cash we have on hand.
Correct.
As to what we can do over a 3-month period. But remember, we have bills to pay, so we can't tie up all of our money for that 3-month period. For a
Do
3-month
we have
period.
August
investments to
1st.
make too?
yeah.
Yeah.
August 1st and August 15th, we make millions of dollars worth of debt payments. So the money doesn't sit in the bank very long.
Long, right. Good. Anything else? Thank you, Mary Jane.
Transfers? Do we have transfers to vote on?
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Under item 6, kind of talked about both of them a little bit. The first is negotiated salary transfers for the Guilford firefighters, the International Association of Firefighters, the IAFF. We did settle that labor contract at the very end of the year and paid those retro salaries out the first week of the new year, which we have put back. And this $84,605 represents the amount that we paid back in salaries, overtime, and replacement. So we do have funding in our fund balance under assigned reserve for personnel that will cover this expense. So I'm requesting that you approve and send this to the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Second.
Can I just ask, what is the amount that?
Second, need a second.
Oh, sorry,
Okay, so Sue's got it.
what is the amount that we have available for?
It's about
labor?
87,000 right now. So it almost uses it, which tells us that we budgeted very well in our
Yeah.
reserve for personnel.
Mhm.
We've already made large withdrawals from that fund because of the GEA,
other-
some of the larger contracts,
Yes.
especially the contracts that were over 2 years
Right.
that we had to. So the fact that I have 87,000 left in my fund and I only need 84,
Good
Amazing.
budget.
Good
budget.
work.
we did we did good work. We'll say that, right, Mitch? Good
Yeah.
job. Good job, Mitch.
Budgeting is an art, not a science.
That balance is in fund balance, it stays there. In the new budget, we have more money to contribute to that, which is
For
something.
future
we can-
contracts.
For future contracts, even though we don't have one coming up this next year, so,
But
you know.
we'll
but-
start to replenish that for the
Correct,
next time.
and, because when we look at those numbers, we look at them as exact as we can, you know, it's, again, it's not just a number we
Ballpark.
pull out of the hat. You know, Mitch and I scour over those numbers and really try to bring you, you know, appropriate numbers for that budget, right, Mitch? So, say
Just nod
yes,
your head.
say
Yeah,
yes. So this actually just shows us, you know, that we actually did a really good job this past year, which, it's hard because obviously we're taking a stab at where we think the contracts might come in. One contract might be higher, the other one might be lower. Overall,
Comes out in the wash.
it exactly came out in the wash. So that money is actually in your fund balance. If you look at that page 52, 54, whatever it is, and you'll see that number in your audit.
Good, thank you. Is there a motion to transfer $84,605 from fund balance assigned, reserved for personnel into the appropriate line items, and to recommend the same to the Board of Finance?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second. Any further questions? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Okay.
Okay,
Departmental transfers?
So these are the overages I referred to when we were
through
discussing
revenues,
the
expenses.
expenditures. As you can see, we have the items that are overdrawn on the left-hand column and the budgets that have money to support those overages on the right-hand side. So I tried to give a little explanation of why we either need or have the extra money. I don't know if you had any specific questions.
Nope. I'm good on those.
Covered it, thanks for the explanations.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that, you know, we knew the two things are legal and fire, and those are the two items that we've been talking about all year
All year.
long, knowing that we were gonna have those overages. Without them, we'd have very little transfers at the end of the year. So, you know, again, good work by our departments to work within their budget lines.
Good,
Just gotta get that out there.
Great.
thank you.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the departmental transfers as documented by Mary Jane in the
So
listing that we have? So moved. Second. Any further questions? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
Another year.
Yeah. Well, when the audit's done, it's another year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right. Okay, item 11, discuss and take possible action on proclamation declaring September 21st, 2018 as Peace Day in the town of Guilford. This is an annual proclamation, I understand. It's been done in the past. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 12, request for use of town property. 12.1, act on request from the Guilford Basketball League to place a sign on the green advertising its ongoing registration. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, motion carries. 12.2, act on request from Christ Episcopal Church to place a sign on the green advertising its tag sale taking place September 29th, 2018, sign placement 9:15 to 9:29. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. 12.3, act on request from Shoreline Arts Alliance to use the green and to place a sign on the green advertising its Rising Star Theater Experience taking place July 15th through the 19th and July 22nd through the 26th. And I'm assuming that's 2018, not 2019? 2019? Oh, it's for next year? We do it that far in advance?
It depends, sometimes
Okay.
you can hold off on it, but.
All right, sign placement 7/1 to 7/15. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, refusals, hearing none, motion carries. Act on request from the Shoreline Arts Alliance to use the green and to place a sign on the green advertising its Shakespeare on the Shoreline taking place July 31st to August 4th, 2019. Sign placement, 7/17 to 8/1. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Aye. Wait a minute. Seconded.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Act on request from the Democratic Town Committee to place a sign on the green advertising its Jacobs Beach Picnic taking place September 29th, 2018, rain date September 30th, sign placement 9/15 to 9/29. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
I guess
Thank
I'll
you.
second that one. Name is familiar.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Act on request from the Guilford Keeping Society to place a sign on the green advertising its beer tasting taking place September 8th, 2018, sign placement 8/25 to 9/8. You want to make that one?
Yeah, I do.
Is there a second? I'll
Second.
second. Yeah, I'll second that one. All right. Actually, that's
They
a
do a
fun,
very
that's a
nice
fun
job
event.
with
They
that
do a nice,
event.
very nice event, job with
And
that
it's a
event.
great property.
It really is. Call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. 12.7, act on request from the Allison Variant Memorial Scholarship to place a sign on the green advertising its fundraiser taking place September 8th, 2018. Sign placement 8/27 to 9/8. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Good. Item 13, correspondence. Anybody have anything they want to add?
No.
14, committee reports. Lou?
The ongoing fee committee is meeting again. We're going to meet with Mr. Thody this week, get some further input from staff on the building committee matters. And I did get a completed recommendation and report from the fire commission with regard to the proposed fee increase for the fire marshal, not fee increase, adding a fee proposal. So that may have to go through, Pam's not here, it may have to go through.
Through an ordinance, yeah.
Through an ordinance. But the fire commission has voted on this. It's in the form of a paper, reports. I'll have to scan it and send it around. I got it yesterday, Sunday, literally. So, good work. I mean, the fire commission is enthusiastically behind us and has asked us to move it forward, and I'll share that with everybody, and we'll keep it moving.
Sam?
The Housing for Economic Development Plan Committee, which is working on increasing Guilford's affordable housing stock, is having an open meeting at the library tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, where the architectural firm of Karen Patriquin and Associates will be presenting, continue to talk about and present the feasibility of developing an affordable housing unit or units on the Woodruff Rollwood property, which has already been discussed and been written about in the paper. But this is so that people who have interest in it or questions about it will be able to talk to the professionals involved and the people from town offices involved. So it's 7 o'clock Tuesday night, August 21st.
Thank you. Anything else? Nope. Old business? New business? Hearing none. Public forum? Joan, welcome. Thank you for sitting through an hour-and-a-half meeting.
Coming to that housing.
Yeah.
Can you, 7.
I'm Joan Stepbacker. I live at 5 Shore Lane on the backside of Lake Quantapug.
Yep.
I'm also president of the Friends of Quantapug, which is a proactive volunteer group composed of people around the lake. How many more you need?
No, that's it. One for Tracy.
I'm
One to
just-
Tracy.
I'm just passing these around because I know some of you don't have them. We had given them out during the
sorry, this is
2016
Debbie.
meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We are here, also, I'm gonna pass out some letters that we recently have received. 5 of them.
From our friends at DEP.
Oh, yes, we've been going back and forth with them. So, we'll give you a little more insight. I'm gonna try and keep it to 3 minutes.
We will give you some grace period on that.
Okay, thank you. And also, here's some pictures of the south end of the lake. And as you look at them, all these areas are mud flaps, which I'm gonna discuss. And here's some more that remain. Okay, as everybody know, our lake is used by not only people that live around by the lake, but people all over the state, because we have the state boat ramp on the north end, and we also have classes, and we have the crew team from Choate and so forth. Choate donates $2,500 a year to the maintenance of the lake. Lake Quanapog is one of our greatest natural resources in the town, along with the comparable, there's the town dock. And we're here today to give a little history and update on the lake maintenance for those who have no idea what's actually going on, especially since we have some new board members on. A few years ago, we asked our state reps and selectmen to seek out a grant to be able to treat Lake Quanapog. We received like 20,000, plus we had like $5,000 in grants. So this year, the Park and Rec Department had $25,000 for the Lake Quanapog and the beach. Rick takes care of the beach and has a lot of expenses for that. And we've been attending over the last 3-4 years, the Park and Rec Commission meetings. So this last year, we thought everything was underway, the permits were granted or applied for. We have a company, Aquatic Aqua, All Habitat, who has been, who filed for the permits this year. And they filed for them early enough, March, April. And what we'd like, the best time to do the weed treatment is, May, June, July, that time when the weeds are starting to grow, not like where they are now, just before the surface. Well, what has happened right now, that after Rick got through with the park, the Quanapog Beach area, we have like $17,000 left, plus I guess $2,500 from Choate, so there's like $19,500. We had planned on doing a weed treatment of the rest of the lake, the complete lake. The north end, then there's a middle, like a shoal area, like we call it an island, but it's not. Everybody goes out there. It's a very shallow area. And then as you look at the maps, you can pass these around down.
Yeah, everybody's
you'll
got one.
see that they, okay. That it gets very, very shallow. And so anyway, we didn't get back, DEP never got back to us, and that they had okayed that we could do this. So finally, we ended up getting a letter from DEP, and you have a copy of that, on like July 5th, saying that to David Roach from All Habitat Services, that they reversed, and you're gonna see this National Diversity Database referred to NDDB throughout all the literature and the letters and so forth. But they denied the right to be able to go ahead and do that. And what they evidently in the south end, and this happened during Greg Bugby, and I've been in real close touch with Greg Bugby, and so has Rick Maynard. Greg Bugby's from the Connecticut Agricultural Experimental Station, and he does all the lakes all over the state of Connecticut. And one year he had a student who supposedly saw these two species of weeds that are protected in the state of Connecticut. Okay, and as a result, we haven't been able to do a lot down the south end. So they're insisting, DEP is insisting this year, before anything is done with weed herbicides to treat the weeds, that we have to do a complete survey. So since this came about and I found out about it. Greg Bugby has done a survey of the whole lake except the south end. The south end, as you look at these pictures, is just totally impenetrable. What has happened is last year when it was treated, they treated a 50-foot swath going down the south end for the pond lilies, and it killed the weeds and it went down the bottom but never got the roots. So now all the mud with those roots have risen up to the top, and it's like if you take a ride up there you'll see it's really, really, really bad. It's like one big mud pot after another. It'd be like the size from this table to that table, and smaller ones, one great big thing. And they're about 1 foot to 1.5 foot deep. And according to Greg Bugby, he believes under most of this lower part here, there's like 6 or 7 feet of water that's still usable, but the south end down here, is really the southernmost part of the south end is in worse shape. I mean, if someone fell in there right now, I don't even, it would be a disaster trying to get them out. And now the dam is in serious danger too, but that's another whole issue.
Wait, what do you mean? What's the matter with the dam?
Well, we've been talking about redoing the whole dam and rearranging the road. It's got some cracks in the dam, and then if you look at this picture right here, here's a picture what the dam looks like. It's like all overgrown and hasn't been kept up. This whole area usually is kept up by the Public Works Department, but it hasn't. The town owns the south end. They own the dam. The state owns the ramp. The state ramp on the north end. But this is supposed to be maintained, but you can see that there's a lot of it hasn't been kept up and cleaned up. So we do have a plan, which I wasn't going to bring up, but there is a proposal. We had a $75,000 study done in 1999 that took 2 years that Mr. Ballou did. I can't think of his first name. Don Ballou did that to rearrange the whole south end and push the dam back 25 feet and rearrange that whole intersection. But that's like a $3.5 million road structure, infrastructure thing, project. So it was kind of just put on the back table and nothing's been done. But right now the culverts that are under there are not, when we get a heavy rain, that whole area the culverts can't handle it, so it comes up over the road and it floods all the way into Hamlin's yard and all the way, the whole area is almost practically shut down. It becomes impassable during heavy, heavy rains and flood storms. And when I was on the mitigation committee, I suggested that this would be one area that would be, looked into besides Chaffinch Island and Andrews Road and Long Hill Road, that this would be another one. But that's not what I'm here for today to get into, is that project, that infrastructure project. I'm just letting you know that we've been denied the right to do the weed treatment. We have $17,000 left and another $2,500 from.
But doesn't it say you're denied for that particular chemical, which
Right.
you could go back to using?
No, then if you read it, it goes, the permit says one thing, and then in here it says you must continue to use, goes on, we will require an aquatic plant survey that specifically targets the 2 state-listed aquatic plant species identified below before we consider using sonar and SRP in the southern part of the lake. And then the permit specifically, which I do not have a copy of the permit, but the permit specifically says it can't be done until the survey is done. The problem is the south end is totally impenetrable.
It says you can't use sonar.
Right.
But you can go back to using.
No, that's what this says, but
We would have
the
to
permit.
reapply because we applied with.
For sonar.
With sonar, so I
Yeah.
think we would have to reapply.
But right now, we can't, they still want a survey. We cannot get to the south end of the lake. It's totally impenetrable with any kayak or canoe. Greg Bugby did the whole lake, except he could not penetrate that south end.
Okay,
Or
so
we
in
could
the letter where it says here's our letter from
DDB. Yeah.
They were able to treat the lake this year, but not with sonar. So what that means is we never applied to do it without sonar?
Right, we never applied to do it without sonar. But the permit that they gave us states that a survey has to be done first of the whole lake, which I do not have a copy of that permit.
Okay. All right.
So we're caught, it's almost like one end of DEP doesn't know what the other side of the room is
Not
doing.
uncommon.
Yeah. So as a result, we're caught in this situation, and what we would like to do is, since it's later in the season, and if we reapply for a permit to do the rest of the lake, another month and a half, the weeds are gonna be dying and falling to the ground, into the floor of Lake Quantipai. What we would like to do, and move along as quick as we can, if we can use this money, and that's why I'm coming before you guys, women, use the 17,000 plus the 2,500, whatever it takes. The survey's about 2,500, so let's stick with the $17,000 to try and get a weed harvester in there, or do some hydro raking to open up that south end before it totally closes up. And even Greg Bugby said this, if we could get a weed harvester in there, and he had talked to David Roach, who had popped into his office like a week ago and said, asked him about it, and that's what they suggested would be the best thing to do. What we're hoping out of a survey is that they do not find the weed. Greg Bugby has not been able to find that protected species weed the last 3 years. If we don't find that weed, then we're gonna be as good as gold from now on to do whatever we want with the south end of the lake, because that is what has held us up from dredging, everything, from before. I mean, we have had, and they want another survey, and unfortunately, when you look at that pamphlet that we put together a few years ago for the Board of Selectmen, there's already been like 22 surveys and studies done on Lake Quantipai, but they insist on another one. So,
Well, they're insisting on another one only because of the use of sonar SRP. And Charlie, I think you had the same concern. Had we applied using the old chemicals, well, we don't know, we're conjecture,
yeah.
is that we would have been able to do that. So it's the introduction of a new chemical, which has an impact on something that, an endangered species that they found there. It doesn't surprise me that they said no, but what surprised me here is that we could have gone ahead with the old plan. So I guess, as soon as we found this out, why didn't we just throw another permit in, regardless of whether we needed it, or whether we would actually use that stuff?
So here's a little clarification, I think, Matt. So last year, the target was the lilies.
Right.
And it was, whatever the product was, I don't remember off the top of my head, what did we use for
Diquan,
that?
I think it was.
Diquan?
I think it was that Diquan.
Diquan, yeah. And that was the recommended from Greg Bugby to go with that product and Dave Roach from All Habitat to take care of the lily pads. If you want to come back this year, there's a different weed that Diquan will work on as well, so the sonar. So they want to use the sonar for this other weed that's below the lily pads. They had to get the lily pads out. It cleared about a 50-foot wide swath so you can get down the center last year. But it's a different product for this, whatever this other weed is, sonar. And to Joan's point, Greg's really frustrated. He's surveyed this lake at least 3 times, I think, in the last couple of years. He hasn't found this, whatever this
Yeah, and this year.
protected species is. He just did it again August 10th, I think it was,
Yeah.
maybe 2 Fridays ago.
Yeah.
And he said overall the lake's in pretty good shape. It's just that south end is so bad you can't get in there to do anything.
Which is why you guys are willing to forego treatments on the other part of the lake
Yes.
to do the south end stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I'm here for.
So, and did Bugby issue that report yet? Is he?
I do not have a
He
copy.
just did it, yeah, it was a.
I
Does he
talked
give
to
us-
him- I don't
I saw an
think it was-
email that he had a summary that basically was saying, the lake is in good shape, we don't
Yeah.
need to do those treatments this year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not in perfect shape, but I mean, we're just willing to let that go and not lose this into a pasture or whatever's gonna happen, you know? It's,
I had the benefit of having a tour. Joan took me on a tour around the lake, and it could clearly see what she's talking about. But I did ask Joan a question, and I had a subsequent conversation with Harvey Smith. to some degree, I think we are fighting an ecological transformation or an evolution of a body of water over time. So I think no matter what we do here, if we do harvest that, we can pretty much count on the fact that we're gonna be back doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We're gonna be back doing it again.
Fighting nature.
And my understanding is, every time we kill these weeds, all right, they sink to the bottom. They become part of the ecology, all right, and creates the landmass. And also the natural flow from the mountains, which is where that is fed from, the hills, fed from, through that lake, is bringing sediment with it. So that lake is filling up. So, again, generations later, that lake may be something significantly different than what it is today. And I think Joan said it probably turned into a pasture at some point, right?
If we don't,
Which, and that's what Harvey had said to me. He said Buster Scranton's property on the other side of that culvert was probably part of that same lake at one point.
yeah.
So I think no matter what we do, we're making a decision that commits us to further investment over time to protect that resource. The question I have is, you mentioned safety. Access to that part of the lake. How essential is it? Because,
People used to be able to swim down there and kayak and turn around in the kayak
Right.
and everything.
so what do we think is the best outcome? That they may be able to turn the kayak, we're not gonna create it into a swimming
could-
area again. You'd have to take out hundreds of yards of material and fill, correct? And which I suspect DEP may not let us do.
Well, last time when we did the harvesting, the weed harvester went in, the town took away 35 dump truck loads
Right.
at the end of the lake. It was put by, behind where Buster's barn is, the house there right across from there,
Street,
there's
yeah,
a
there's the
flat area
access,
there. Yeah, and then the town would pick it up and they dumped it up on an area of Buster's up there, way in the back on,
It scares me to think whether or not we had permits to dump it anywhere, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Was that an approved project of DEP,
Well-
just because we can take it out of there, do we have a place that they will allow us to put it? And when they took those 35 truckloads out, did that create the swimming capacity again down there?
yes,
or
it was,
just-
it opened up that whole area. It
When was
really
that?
did. Pardon?
When was that?
Oh, the weed harvesting took place in, let's see, the north end was 2004, Hydro Rake, 202, we spent $20,000 on the south end, but it was more than that, it was $40,000
So it was
for
15,
hydro
16
raking on
years
the
ago,
yeah.
south end of the lake, but it wasn't done really efficiently. What happened was, they went up, they had their machine, they went up, and they came back, and they hydro raked, they dumped it, and then they went back, and we only had $40,000, and it cost like $1,000 an hour. They went up, they picked it up, they came back, and they dumped it. We should have had 2 drop-off points, one here and one here. So if you go from here to here, you drop it off, you come over a little further, and drop it off, you go up, and you drop it off. We could have cut our time in half with a hydro raker there and double the amount of the removal of.
Where are we today? What are we trying to do today?
Well, not doing it, this is just public forum.
comment.
This is public
Yeah.
forum, so,
What
but,
we want to do is be able to use the remaining money left that was allocated to be able to work on the.
What's required
South end.
for that to happen?
Board of the.
We would have to apply.
Interestingly enough, Park and Rec has jurisdiction over this project. I think the Board of Selectmen gave it to Park and Rec a couple
Okay,
years
so
ago.
it's gotta go through
It's gotta
Park and
go
Rec
through Park
Commission and
Rec.
everything,
However,
okay.
I have some longer-term objectives for this. I'm not sure this belongs at Park and Rec. No offense, Rick, but you're not a
There's
lake,
enough
you're
of
not,
the
you're not a
beach.
scientist, you're not, you're not the inland wetlands guy. We have a department, inland wetlands, that probably should have the responsibility for this. Who would
Or at
take
least
into
input,
take into consideration the needs of park and recreation, but someone who is in the business of inland wetlands. So at the current moment, I wanna see, I would like to see a recommendation come through Park and Recreation and through Rick, because you're currently the responsible party for managing Lake Quannapock. Now, I will also suggest that there is unsettled business. No one seems to know who owns the lake. This has been an ongoing battle between the state and the town for a number of years. So at some point, I think we need to get clarification. I think the state has basically said, it's not ours, because they know that these problems exist relative to maintaining it as a usable
If it was
piece
there,
of
it's their
property.
problem.
Bingo. So they've been saying, this is yours.
Every time something happens on the lake, like we had a drowning on the beach,
Yeah.
the town was sued for it because it was in the water. I had someone drown
Yeah.
off my dock, and they came after me for it.
Right.
And then I had a bad accident off my dock,
Yeah.
and I was sued because
Yeah.
it was in the water. So
Right.
it's a question of how they enter the water, as to who's liable. That's what I was told from.
Right.
Now, just a question, I understand what you're saying, and what Harvey's saying, that it's a sort of a natural process to change or whatever, but
The smell.
I'm just wondering that if we don't do something at South End, I don't know this stuff, I'm just posing the question, does it impede the flow of the lake? Because right now, the water flows from the north through, and it goes out that, over the dam.
Right.
It's constantly moving. I don't know if that water flow gets impeded by, all the growth that's going on there now, and what does that do to the rest of the lake?
Sounds like the
Water-
dam needs work too.
Water will find its way.
Yeah.
Water will create a stream, and it will create the stream through that mud area.
Yeah, and it
It
will
will.
also flood the whole.
Well, my understanding is that if there is significant enough stream on a consistent basis from the lake feeding into the dam, it creates its own channel. Again, I'm way out over my skis here in terms of science, all right? But actually, it was part of the conversation I had with Harvey. Harvey said if there's enough water flow out of the lake down to the dam, those mud flats wouldn't be there, or there would be a gap.
They would be black.
There would be,
blocking
yeah,
it.
there would be a gap, there would be a
I mean, they are
channel.
so
It creates-
thick.
Water will create a channel.
They're about a foot to a foot and a half thick.
So, but, and here's the point, if we're looking at $17,000 to eradicate or to pull the fill out, all right? And the last time we did it was 2002, $1,000 a year to keep that body of water as,
Functional as
as
possible.
functional as
Yeah.
possible, to me, makes sense. don't know.
I do not
But
have
it's
a
gotta go
price.
through
It's gotta go through the process, right?
We do not have a price on the hydro raking
Right.
yet, but I mean, at least if we could get.
Well, that's what
them in
the
there.
Park and Rec
Yeah,
Commission is
yeah.
for, and go through that cycle.
But,
to
I mean, Rick has
decide.
worked very close with us, and we contacted immediately, I contacted Sean Scanlon and Kenneth, and he was on his way out. Yeah, and then
Exactly.
Vinnie Candelaro, and Sean turned it over to Vinnie, and Vinnie really got on, and this is what we
Yep.
got, but then the permit says something different from what they, so it's,
So in some degree, this is a blessing in disguise, I hate to say it that way, but the fact that you got the permit denied now pushed us to hire Greg Bugby, who told us, you really don't need to apply anything this time, and now there's a possibility of using that $17,000 for another purpose on that lake. So, did Deep do us a
But-
favor? How could that happen?
but also this survey may, if they can't find those
Right.
two weeds that are mentioned in here, the water marigold and the capillary
Right.
pondweed, we're good as gold as not having problems with the south end of the lake and being treated with whatever people want to treat it with,
Right.
or we want to treat
Yeah,
it
the
with.
best of outcomes is Greg can't find it, and
Yeah.
they accept his report, which
Yeah.
means in the
If they-
future, we can use sonar or DP or whatever it is.
Yeah. To keep it
Next
open.
year, when we're gonna need it, I
Yeah.
suspect we'll be back for another $20,000 capital.
When you pointed out that there is some growth around the dam, and
Yes.
that was the responsibility of the town,
Public Works,
Public Works.
yes.
Is that something that can happen, or is that
That
all
can happen at any
contingent?
time.
So that's something we can
Yes,
think
that can
about
be
as
taken
well?
care of. Yeah, because it's a sight line, when you come down Lake Drive and you gotta look this way to head, across, or either
Yeah,
way.
I drive that way,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
And it's always been kept up, but that, right now, it's a real mess. But also, the other thing you talk about, going back to natural land, a swamp area is, when it's really dry, the smell, it just smells like a sewer. So now you have a health problem, you got mosquitoes, an increase in mosquitoes, a horrible smell for the whole south end. It's just, and we're hoping in future years that the town might be able to apply for a grant for road infrastructure to redo that whole south. It would take about 3 years. I mean, they've done Mally's Pond, they've done Guilford Lakes, they've done Dream Lake. Westlake had some, no, they didn't do anything over there major like these other three have. And that would be a 3-year according to Fort Lee, it would be a 3-year project. And Don Ballou has it all, you know, I didn't give you a copy, I showed you a copy, but it's on record. But those culverts aren't gonna last forever. There's just 2 small culverts, they're about like this, that carry all the water. It goes over the dam, goes across some rocks, and then hits 2 culverts about this wide. And that's it for
We will engage the new engineering team to start to take a look at that and identify that as a
Yeah.
potential project down the road.
And we would like to also be part of.
You'll be part of the discussion.
All the discussions with the lake, because we're just trying to be stewards of the lake and keep everything going. And then the thing is, when they do, like next year, when they do the weed control, every year they've done it, that we would have a weed cleanup. Everybody would bring their boats and we'd throw all these messy weeds and, you know, and you'd get leeches and everything because they're in the weeds. And anyway, so we'd drop them off and then I'd pick them up and I had a place to dump them with an all-terrain vehicle, and we just kept it moving. And it worked out really well, and then had a picnic afterwards. But because all those dead weeds seemed to gather in the cove area, so we kind of just cleaned it all up. We have tried to do best we used to have a lot of the lake cleanup days tied in with town cleanup. I mean, we've eliminated ice fishing during the winter. We're one of 3 lakes in the state of Connecticut that does not allow any ice fishing. So that has helped keep the lake clean also.
That begs a question, who makes that determination that there's no ice fishing on there?
The state of Connecticut.
The state did?
Yeah, I had 1,800 signatures and went before the state, and.
And can you share that documentation with us, because that would suggest the state has jurisdiction over that body of water. I'm not a lawyer, I just play
I
on
do
TV.
have.
I'm gonna give this back to you, because you probably want these.
No, I have plenty, I have all these that.
All right, Joan, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like I say, we just really want to be involved and be the stewards of the lake, because we're on the lake.
You will. We will have you in.
And I mean,
part.
we appreciate everything Greg does. I mean, it's not that there's any animosity, we're just trying to, and Greg Bugby is like our greatest source for this, because this is his thing, you know? So,
Meanwhile, the benthic blankets that we've been putting on the beach, that's been very effective. I think we've done it 3 years, 4 years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We put them down we take them out Memorial Day. We put them out when the water's really cold, early
Yeah, it is
April, late
cold.
March.
Yeah.
And Greg is out there with us doing it, and he's a volunteer, does it for us, and it's like 22 of those 10 feet by 50-foot blankets we put down. The tarps, basically,
Tarps,
with
yeah.
weights. And then we take them out. Greg helps us with that too, right before we open up Memorial Day weekend. But it's been effective in controlling the weeds in the swim area.
Great. Great. Excellent, thank you very much.
okay.
More to follow. Anyone else in the public forum? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.